Hello, I'm Miriam Unruh, an instructor with the Academic Learning Center. I was supposed to be there live with Patrick today, but circumstances have prevented that, so I thought I would record a short video on 3 key strategies for learning. The 3 essential strategies for learning material effectively and that will in the end reduce stress is first to organize to understand, second is to practice regular retrieval, and third is to space that retrieval out over weeks and months. And I'm going to go into more detail on how you do this. So the first thing is that too often students tend to, particularly when they are faced with lots and lots of information, tend to approach information as individual facts that they need to stuff into their brain and memorize and regurgitate for tests. The problem is when you get into professional programs where they are training you to be a professional in the field, and the information is key to that, is that you need to understand why you're doing things, and you need to be able to think critically about that information you're learning. So that is one reason why it's really important that you reassess how you approach your learning, the information, excuse me. The other reason is that, quite frankly, it is less stressful to approach the information concept by concept. So you're thinking about things as a bigger picture than each individual factoid, so to speak. So when you're going into a lecture, there's a couple things that you can begin to do. One is you can look at what the topic of the lecture is, see if there's several topics. You can review a course objectives to have that in mind so that you're keeping in mind what you're supposed to be pulling out of the course. If there's a textbook, you can look at a textbook and look at their topics, not read the chapter, but look at the topics that are being discussed in that textbook for sort of main concepts that will be discussed. Or if there are PowerPoints posted beforehand, take 10, 15, 20 minutes to go through the PowerPoints and simply jot down what are the main concepts. What are they doing in those slides? Okay. And after the course, after you finish listening to the lecture, and when you're working on with the material, you can start to do things like use Venn diagrams, like the picture on the top there, or compare contrasts. If you're looking at multiple pharmaceuticals, you can do it by disease, you can do it by symptoms. There are all kinds of different ways of beginning to reorganize that information in a way that is meaningful and useful for you. And that is part of something called elaboration, where you are working to process and explain new content in your own words. The more you can also connect the new information to existing knowledge. So, for example, Pavlov's concept of behaviorism and learning takes on a whole new meaning when I connect it to how I'm training my dog, right? And all of a sudden, there's a whole new level of understanding what he's working on because I'm practicing it and seeing it happen around my house. So I'm connecting information to existing knowledge. Use visual new information when possible, images, begin to look at how things connect to, say, a larger body system or to a suite of pharmaceuticals or however it works for you, but you're beginning to fit larger pieces together. And if you find that you're getting concepts mixed up, take time to compare and contrast those concepts. Okay, so that is sort of big picture of organize your information in order to understand it, but also so you can control that information so that you're in charge of how all these pieces are relating in your understanding. So that's the one. And then second is practice retrieval. Now we resist retrieval practice because as human beings, we like to do, and this is not a moral statement, this isn't individually focused. It really is how we're made as human beings. We tend to default to the easier way of doing things, right? And the easier way of doing things is rereading your notes or recopying the notes or rereading chapters. But there is significant amount of research that shows that that is not helpful at all and that it will fail you pretty quickly. So what you want to be doing is practicing retrieval. Now, the reason we resist practicing retrieval is because it takes energy. It takes mental effort. And this is particularly hard when we're tired and stressed. So you want to keep that in mind. But practicing retrieval is a bit like taking the stairs rather than the escalator, right? So, but it has shown over and over and over again that this is how we move information into long-term memory, that process of pulling something up and trying to remember it, even though we fail when we try to remember it, and then go look at the answer, and then try again in another couple hours, in a day, to pull it up, is how we begin to learn, right? So if you try to learn a complicated password, you know that eventually you'll memorize it, particularly if you practice retrieving it, pulling up. So the order here is a little bit off, but I would say the most important one is to use practice questions if they are available. Practice questions are the best because, number one, they challenge you on thinking about things critically. They ask you to think through a scenario, so you're not just working with shoving facts into your brain. Again, it works towards that organizational concept. But you will have to learn processes. There will be things that you just need to memorize. And cue cards, Quizlet, Anki are excellent for that. The key thing for both these things, practice questions and cue cards, is that you don't look at the answers until you've tried retrieving that information. So you're going to look at that cue card and you're going to try to think of what are the 5 symptoms of whatever disease you're looking at. And you might only be able to remember 2 of them, but that's part of the retrieval practice. And then you go look at the answer. And same with practice questions. You try to work them out first before you go look at the answer. Okay. And then after you've looked at the answer, then you're going to go back and figure out sort of what section of that problem that you didn't get right or that you didn't understand. And so that when you revisit that practice question in a week from now or in a couple days, then you have more information to work for. You are going to gradually free yourself from your cue cards, from your notes, from the practice questions, so you can answer questions without reviewing the answers, right? So you know them. So ideally, you're working towards cue cards and practice questions so you can start answering them and knowing they're right without checking to see what the answer is. Okay. And then on top of retrieval, you're going to space your retrieval. So you're not going to wait to do this retrieval method until the week before the exam. You're going to start now. And we do this for a couple reasons. One is because we lose about 50 to 60% of the information that we initially encode by listening within 24 to 36 hours. And in fact, a fair amount of evidence to show that we lose 50% within like 12 hours. So it goes away pretty quickly. So a really good practice is to try to review high yield content within 1 day of having heard it. So that could mean that you are going to put aside an hour to begin to reorganize the material and begin to do some small retrieval, beginning to set up some cue cards, and working on that. And then you're going to revisit the material a week from now, and then again a month from now. So you're going to be doing this constant cycle of retrieval practice where you're learning new information and you're integrating it with information you've already learned, and then you're revisiting the material that you've already learned again in a week. So it's constant practice. And that's it. The three things that you need to do is making sure you're organizing your material by concepts, that you are making sure you understand the material, because that's your bedrock in terms of knowing what you're doing with it, that you're practicing retrieval, and that you're spacing your retrieval out over time. Good luck with the term. Sorry I couldn't be there today. Hopefully I will be able to come next time. Thank you.